I would say that the USPAP competency rule basically tells us three things. Number one, we need to be competent to perform the assignment.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome to the Appraiser Coach podcast. My name is Dustin Harris, and I am the Appraiser Coach. Welcome to the program. We're sponsored today by Working RE Magazine, workingre.com, and TrueTracks, truefootage.tech, truefootage.tech. All right, folks, let's dig into this. Had an interesting experience over the last couple of weeks with regard to AI. Really gone down the rabbit hole. And I know many of you who listen to this program go, really, Dustin, you've been going down that rabbit hole for a long time. And that is true. That is true. However, I have gone down the rabbit hole even deeper. My little cottontail is not even sticking out of the hole anymore. I've dug down and I've gone off into branches, and I've gone deep. And one of the things that I'm finding, folks, is how beneficial AI can be to my report development. Okay, so with regard to that, and I know there's a lot of naysayers out there, and by the way, I'll go toe to toe with you all day long. Talk to me in the comments. We'll have a conversation, right? We won't call it a debate. We'll call it a conversation. For those of you who are against AI, you think AI is going to replace appraisers, you don't trust AI, you think that it's dangerous. Again, I think there's something to be said about all of those arguments, and I will give you that. But with regard to the future and AI, I've said it before, I'll say it again, that if you are not using AI, here's the question. Will AI replace appraisers? Yes. AI will replace the appraisers who are not using and understanding AI. It's not just enough to be using ChatGPT once in a while, okay? And that's what most people are doing. It is much bigger than that in the sense that you understand what artificial intelligence is, what these LLMs, large language models are, what they're used for, which ones are best for a given situation. But folks, more and more increasingly, I've been using AI for my report development. In fact, I would say that it is a rare case, meaning probably less than 5% of the time. So in 100 appraisal reports, 5 of them, I don't use AI. And even then, I would say 5% of the time, I don't actually get into AI for a specific thing within the appraisal. Meaning I've used AI to set up systems that work within my system already. So in that sense, I'm using AI on 100% of my appraisals. But it's a rare case that I don't, on a specific assignment, get into AI, some large language model, whether it be Manus or Grok or ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or you name it, Notebook LM. I'm using various different models for various different things. And one of the things that keeps coming up is this idea of competency. Now, I've spoken here on this microphone before about significant assistance, about statements in your report. Okay, and for those of you who have missed those episodes, I'll just summarize it and say, I don't think you need to quote that you use ChatGPT in your appraisal reports any more than you need to quote that you used a particular Casio model calculator. To me, it's a tool. Now, if you are trusting it blindly, putting a question in, getting the answer, copying and pasting it into your report, well, maybe then you should probably indicate that that's where it came from. But folks, if you're doing that, come on, you're doing it wrong. You're relying too heavily, blindly on something without double checking. Remember, folks, you're responsible for everything that goes in your appraisal report. The last little bit, I've been traveling the country doing workshops on AI with appraisers. And we will sit in a room with 10 to 12 appraisers with the big screen, and we will be jumping into AI, and I'm showing not just about business development, how to grow your business using AI, but how to actually use AI in your appraisal process and to help you to write better appraisal reports, to have more support, to have better language, to have better checks and balances, to have a trusted advisor when you run into challenges and problems with specific assignments. Which brings me to the episode today. And the episode today is all about questioning this idea of competency. When we get back from the break, I want to remind us what the competency rule is from USPAP, and then I want to get into the question that I'm going to pose today, which is how relevant is the competency rule these days? First, I want to pause and remind you that we are sponsored by a great company called TrueTrack. Speaking of supporting your adjustments, we're talking today about technology. We're talking today about utilizing to better our appraisal reports. And folks, there is nothing easier than TrueTracks. TrueTracks can be learned in minutes, and it can be used for powerful support for your appraisal adjustments and your appraisal conclusions. Check them out by going to the website. It's truefootage.tech and learn more about TrueTracks. We, of course, are sponsored by another great company who is very forward-thinking and has written articles on AI and what it does for appraisers, and that is Working RE Magazine. Working RE, folks, is my source for great content when it comes to what's going on in the appraisal world. You can find out more and sign up for their free newsletter at workingre.com. That's working, RE is in workingrealestate.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. I want to share with you what I've been thinking about recently as it has to do with the context of competency. And let me just state it this way. The competency rule as found in USPAP, and I'm not a USPAP instructor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm certainly not on a state board, so take all of this with a grain of salt. This is Dustin Harris interpretation, okay? But I would say that the USPAP competency rule basically tells us three things. Number one, we need to be competent to perform the assignment, okay? If we are not, there is a path to get there, and it basically says that we need to reveal our competency level, acquire the necessary competency to perform the assignment, or withdraw from the assignment. In all cases, we need to be very clear with our audience, the user of the report, what we did. In other words, I was not competent to do this. This is the steps that I took to become competent, and now I feel I'm competent because I took those steps, basically. Okay, so it's all about being very open, being very clear and communicative to our potential users of the report, and revealing what we have done in order to get competent. Now, in the past, I would say, though this is not a hard, fast rule, in the past, most appraisers, if you stop there on the street and say, okay, what is the competency rule? How do you become competent? I would say 99 out of 100 appraisers would say something to the effect of, well, if you're not competent, you need to go find somebody who is, find another appraiser who is, hire or work with that appraiser, have them teach you how to become competent in that particular, mode, and then give them significant assistance. In other words, reveal or identify the specific assistance that they gave you in that particular report. And you might need to do that 2 or 3 times before you become competent in an area, in a type of assignment, in an adjustment model, what have you. Here's, friends, where I think things are changing. Just this morning, had an opportunity to meet with about 8 appraisers on a Zoom meeting. And these are appraisers that I have done AI work with in the past, that we have learned different things about how to use AI in our reports. And it was very heartwarming to hear their stories. And each of them shared specific examples of how they had recently used AI to do something that they felt like would be challenging or difficult. Maybe they weren't incompetent, but it certainly was not in their wheelhouse, if you will, meaning it wasn't something that they were doing on a regular basis. Some test case where they said, here was the challenge, here's what I did to solve the challenge with AI, and here was the outcome. Folks, I'm telling you that things are changing. Now, I am not in any way suggesting that the competency rule with regard to USPAP has or needs to necessarily change. If you actually read the competency rule, if you go into USPAP, right, all of this is already accounted for. But I would say, folks, that we need to rethink our competency side of things. Meaning, are there things, let me give you an example. I won't go into specifics, but there was a specific assignment that I did a couple of years ago that I felt completely out of depth. Now, to be fair, when I accepted the assignment, the scope of work was only so big. Halfway through the assignment, the individual that had hired me reached out and said, "Could you add this component?" Now, this component was a completely different scope of work. It was a whole new appraisal at that point. Okay. And so it went from a $800 appraisal to a $3,500 appraisal. I'm using round numbers, but it was roughly that. That's how much the scope of work had changed. Now, part of the reason that I had to charge $3,500 is I knew that I would have to reach out to an individual who was competent in this particular type of assignment because I was not. Now, I found that expert. In fact, I found an expert that was probably the expert in that particular realm. And I reached out to this person and I said, "Here's my assignment. Can you help me?" And he gracefully said, "Yes, I will." Graciously said, "I will." And we worked together. And I paid that individual $1,500, $2,000, whatever it was. And we were able to work on this assignment together. Not only that, but in order to be compliant with USPAP, I revealed my incompetency to the client up front. I took the steps, if you will, to become competent with that particular assignment. Again, not necessarily learning it all myself, but working through the process with someone else. And then, of course, I gave significant assistance. In fact, I don't think that individual signed the report, but that person was in a signed certification in the report. Okay. So I believe that I took all the steps that I needed to become competent through the USPAP competency rule. That was several years ago. If I were doing that assignment again today, I don't know that I would have hired this individual, because I think that with the proper use, and I want to be clear about what I mean by that, the proper use of AI, and that's not throwing a question at it and accepting whatever answer comes back. That's not how you use AI, folks. It's not Google. But with the proper use of AI, I believe that an appraiser can become competent where he or she may not have been in the past. Now, do you still need to reveal your incompetency up front? Yes, you do. Do you still need to take steps to become competent? Yes, you do. I just think that the steps don't necessarily mean hiring someone else anymore. And do you need to reveal how it was that you took those steps and why you feel you're competent now? Yes. Again, USPAP has not changed. My suggestion, folks, is the way that we approach competency may be changing in the future because of what the magnificent things that we can do with artificial intelligence these days. Thank you for joining today, folks. It is always a joy. And by the way, we are talking about AI on a weekly basis inside the All-Star team. I hope that you will join us if you are interested in even a little bit learning more about AI and how AI can change not just the way you do appraisals, but also your business success. That's the things that we're talking about in the All-Star team. Check us out by going to TheAppraiserCoach.com and clicking on the All-Star team. See you there.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit TheAppraiserCoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.